We are here with Ray Longo with MMA Long Island Magazine as we sit down for a couple of minutes, and we are truly honored to be here with Ray. First of all, Ray, thank you very much for joining us.
No, my pleasure, man. I'm happy I could do this.
We appreciate it. So let's get right into it. You graduated from St. John's, and I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, with a marketing degree, accounting.
No, accounting.
Accounting.
Yeah, Bachelor of Science in Accounting. Yeah.
How did you get into MMA? How did
Well,
that transform?
I was always doing martial arts as a kid, and somewhere in the early '80s, I started, becoming involved with the Jeet Kune Do people out in California, and started teaching. And had a guy come in for lessons who ended up becoming a world kickboxing champion, Mike Ryan. And then just started training kickboxers, started promoting kickboxing with Lou Neglia somewhere. I'm really not sure of the dates, but I'm saying this somewhere in the 80s, early 90s. And then when they did the first UFC in 93, people were looking for a striking coach, and that was really my intro into it. I was doing jiu-jitsu with Craig Kukak at Oishi Dojo in the city, and there I met Matt Serra, and we became good friends. I think I just bought a house down the block from where he lived, so we used to drive in together, and, he was like a phenom back then. And that was it, and he took his first fight, and I convinced him to do like the Thai boxing for conditioning, because everything was just jiu-jitsu, 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 so I thought the conditioning from the Thai boxing would serve him well, and then that's how he kind of got involved with it. Then he started falling in love with the workouts and the Thai boxing. Then he took his first fight and won, and then the rest is history. We ended up, I think he went to Abu Dhabi, and then he got the fight with Shoney Carter at UFC 28, and I could be off a couple, but something like that. And then that was it.
The rest is history.
He had Pete Dragosel was a student of his, Lou Coma was a student of mine. They all wanted to fight, and everything was new at the time. And Luke got the chance to go on the show, which was crazy. And then 2 years later, Matt went on the show with the comeback. That's how fast things are turning over. And then 2 shows later, me and Matt did the coaching for Tough Six and blah, 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 blah.
Well, it's a perfect segue because the next question was about Matt Serra, and of course at UFC 69 he shocked the world.
Yeah.
Beating GSP. Tell us about that, because you were his coach. You were, I believe, his boxing striking coach.
Yeah.
And just tell us you elaborated on your relationship prior to that, but just going into that fight and just the excitement after him putting that belt around his waist and everything that went into that.
Yeah, crazy period, man. Striking coach, but a friend. You know what I mean? It was more friendship there than anything, and it was. He had been dropped from the UFC. And his way, you never know what's around the corner. You know what I mean? So you could never give up. And I think his story is a real great American dream story about just always following your passion and never quitting. Because this guy was dropped from the UFC. I remember talking to him, maybe we'll take a fight in Japan. We didn't know what was going on. Then Joe Silva called and said, hey, we got this concept for the show. It's called The Comeback. All guys that were in the UFC, that were out of the UFC. And the winner gets, I think, $100,000 sponsorship from Zions and $100,000 from the UFC. So it was a $200,000 package, which at the time, I think Matt was sleeping in the basement of his school. Was very, and he was thinking of getting married. Was pretty enticing. So he called me, says, man, this is my last shot. We got to do this, and when can we start? And then that was it, man. We started training for that. He won the show. He beat Chris Weidman, very close fight. He gets the shot at GSP. Nobody gives him a chance. And like you said, the rest is history, man. We kind of, knew what he was going to do.
Well, Matt isn't the only champion that you have coached. Before we get into one of the other champions, we'll talk about Jenny Nadal, because
Right.
Jenny here at Law MMA is a very well-known, respectable, part of this place here, and she just won. She's a New York State kickboxing champion. She just was on Glory, the biggest kickboxing card in the country. You train her. I believe she's the only female fighter that you train personally. Correct me if I'm wrong, but
well, no, I had other females.
Okay.
Yeah, I had some boxing. I had a girl, Christina Rosa.
Okay.
Went to the finals of the New York Golden Gloves. Actually, the night before, Matt had the rematch with St.
So it all goes back.
Which is another good story, but
Right.
we'll leave that for another time. But yeah, Jenny is just, like you say, she's the heart and soul of everything, and man, she's just become another great friend who helps me out in a lot. And for her to, accomplish her dream, which was to fight on really the UFC of kickboxing,
Right.
which is Glory, which really took over for K1, which is a huge name if you're a kickboxer. For her to be on that show, and not only be on that show, but win is really a fascinating thing, and nobody deserves it more than her. She puts the time in, she helps a million people, she works every day, so she carries a lot of hats, man. She's got a full-time job, full-time down here, so I don't know, her time is limited. So for her to really get that victory was huge, man. I mean, it really was. But it shows the dedication and, the desire and all the other attributes that she has that really got it to that point.
Well, we're very happy that she won, and
Yeah, no, I mean, you're happy when people win, but when she wins, you're especially
Of course.
happy.
while we're on the topic of champions, we of course know that you're the trainer of former middleweight champion Chris Weidman. Tell us the story, how you met, how you guys first became together as a kind of an entity. You guys are hand in hand, and just the story behind how Chris Weidman and Ray Longo met.
Yeah, I mean, I'll try to keep it short, but because I've told the story so many times, I think
I'm sure you have.
I can give you the short version. But basically, there was one of Matt's students was calling me and said, "Hey, I'm in Hofstra, and I got this guy. He's a Division I wrestler, and he wants to come over." And I really just, I don't know, at that time, I think, Matt was still fighting. We had guy, Drago. I was like, man, I was kind of blowing the guy off. Man, I wasn't kind of blowing the guy off. I was blowing the guy off. And then Chris happened to come down one night, and we chilled out watching some sparring. I go, I really fell in love with the guy. He was just a good guy, and I think we talked to 1 a.m. that night about a million different things. And then when I saw him in action, I was like, holy crap! At that point, I had never seen wrestling at that high a level before. So when I saw that, I go, wow, this is really different. And he was a big, strong kid, young. And, he took to the striking so quick that he just was transitioning, really, really quick. And that really, and again, as they say, the rest is history with that. Once I saw him in action the first couple of times, I was like, wow, this guy's really special. He's a diamond in the rough. And, everything worked out, thank God, and that was it.
Well, we know, of course, about Chris's career, but more specifically when he got his first belt, beating Anderson Silva, UFC 162. Your feelings on just I'm sure the pure joy that you must have felt, having him as the UFC middleweight champion.
Yeah, it's funny because, those... I'm going to say there's more pure joy now in looking back on it. Back then, you're just doing your job, and it's, it was crazy, man. That night, it was surreal for both nights, but, there's always another fight right after that. There's always something going on. So as I reflect now on everything, it's like, man, I'm really happy, man. It's like, this is some big stuff, and, now with the fight coming at the Garden, I was like, all right, so it's a fight at the Garden. I had a kid win the Golden Gloves at the Garden in 2000, and again, that girl, Christina, went to the finals 2009. Again, it was the night before, Matt fought St. Pierre in the rematch. But as it gets closer, I'm like, the magnitude of this, because that was at the Forum, too. This is at the real Garden.
Mm-hmm.
And you think of all the history, and Ali Frazier, and Duran won the title there, and I'm dating myself, but this is what I remember. Even the New York Knicks, Willis Reed, Walt Frazier. You had so many great athletes coming out of there, and it housed so many championship games and championship fights that I think to be part of that is really, really more special than I thought about a year ago. So I think as it's approaching, I'm like, wow, this is big, man. And we almost weren't even on the card. I thought I was going to have 3 guys on the card, and luckily Chris
Well,
everything went well.
we know that he was announced, I believe, the night before, or the day, the morning of. But
Yeah.
you just touched on it. We all know that he lost his belt to Luke Rockhold at
Yeah.
194, and then obviously the neck injury. But you just touched on it. He has a fight coming up against Yoel Romero, UFC 205 at the iconic Madison Square Garden. How excited are you? It's been almost a full year, basically, since Chris has fought in competition. To take that walk with him through, the Garden, get him back in the octagon, and ultimately get that belt back.
Yeah, no, this is big, man. This is big, and I don't like again. I went through a couple of the things at the Garden. I don't care if you went to the circus at the Garden as a kid. It's like it's special. You know what I mean? Just taking the train in, getting dropped off at the Garden, and all the things, all the great experience you had during your life at the Garden as a sports fan, and then to be participating in one of those things at the Garden, whatever realm it's in, is really special. So, man, it's going to be pandemonium that night. Tickets are already out of control, and everybody's, scampering around for tickets. But this is going to be really, really something special. They stacked that card. I'm happy Chris is involved in it, and I hope he's a fight away from reclaiming his title, man, which is really what we want. So, as special as the Garden, and we're just focusing on a win, and we're going to move on and get back what I believe is rightfully his.
Now, has camp started for Chris?
Yes.
So it's underway.
He was,
getting ready for UFC, whatever it might have been.
Yeah, physically he's there. We're going to tighten down the hatches now on a game plan and all that, but he's already been doing his conditioning and all of that stuff, so.
UFC 205 happened because we know Governor Cuomo signed and legalized MMA for the first time in New York. You're a New Yorker, born and raised. When you heard back in March that this was finally happening, more so the fact that MMA is now going to be legalized in New York, in the backyard of where you grew up, what are your thoughts on that? Just,
Yeah, again, look, for me, and I'm being a little weird on this, but it's a little anticlimactic, I think, because I really thought it was going to happen 5 years ago. So every year it was like, we're close, we're going to vote it's 9-2, it's 11-3, everybody, and then nobody shows up to vote. So it was year after year, you kept getting knocked down. So I think if it would have happened, like when it was supposed to happen, I think I'd have a different emotion, but I'm starting to feel it now. But, at this point it was good, and, talking about a backyard too, it'll be special to go to the Coliseum and fight. We're forgetting about that too. As iconic as MSG is, I mean, the Coliseum is more Long Island-y.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So that's going to be pretty cool too, man. We could walk to the Coliseum from here. So
I just passed it on the way here to Law MMA.
So I'm excited for everything. I'm excited for the Garden. I'm excited, when the Coliseum books a fight. I'm excited for all the local guys on Long Island, not just from this gym, but from all the other gyms that are gonna, fight in the arenas that they watch their teams play in and win championships in. Good stuff.
Well, you talked about a couple of fighters in general. I just wanted to ramble off a couple of your fighters and, just give me your take on where they're at, going forward. First off, Al Quinta. Of course, we all know what happened with his dispute with the UFC. We know he's not retired or anything. Just your thoughts on where he is, as a fighter right now.
Yeah, look, these guys get banged up in the sport. The hardest part now for me is getting a guy to fight uninjured. And uninjured is a pretty broad statement because you're always going to be a little dinged up, but nothing major. And that's not easy. And these guys now, as they're getting older, when you're 20 years old and you're pissing vinegar and you hurt yourself, you couldn't give a shit. You couldn't care less. But as you get older, you get married, you have kids, you buy a house, you start thinking about the future, it does, play with you a little bit, and these guys deserve to get paid. They've all had multiple surgeries, and I think it's starting to get to the point where they have to, they don't have a big window of opportunity. So I think Al's holding to his guns. He wanted more money. Definitely didn't ask for anything that was, out of line with anything. I thought everything was reasonable based on what he told me, and we'll see what happens. I think he's a fan favorite, man. I think that kid's the Arturo Gatti of MMA. I don't think we've seen a fight where he didn't fight.
Yep.
He goes in and he throws down. Everybody loves him. Great kid. He's got great instincts. He's, he blends everything together. He's just a good guy, man. I just hope the best of him, and I hate for anything to be. I hate for any people to have trouble over money. You know what I mean? You lend a guy money, he doesn't pay you back, and you lose a friendship. You know, so I hope they do the right thing and they come to some sort of agreement because I'd love when the kid fights, and I think everybody else does too.
We definitely agree. We'd love to see Al back in the octagon, sooner than later.
People love the kid.
The next guy who was supposed to be on the UFC 205 card, but unfortunately, as you touched on before, an injury bug, Vellante.
Yeah, Vellante hurt his knee. Originally, I think he thought it was going to be just a minor thing, and it just wasn't in the cards. He was on. His knee was a problem. I think he just had surgery, so that's really all I could say about him. I'm not even sure, where he's at right now, but I think he just within a week he got the surgery, so he's recovering.
Last fighter that you have over here is Aljo, Aljamain Sterling. We all know that I believe he started off 13-0 and got off to an unbelievable start, lost the decision, and then he had the bicep injury.
Yep.
How far along has he come, and where do you see him going next?
No, Aljo's, the bicep looks really good. He's been training. The Garden was a little close, but I think they're going to put him on the Albany card. There's whispers of a Sunsao, and I think Aljo learned a lot from the Caraway fight. I think he's going to grow from that, and I think that's what it's all about. He definitely has the skill, and he has the desire to be champ. So I'm excited for him. So I think he's going to be on the Albany card.
That's great. That's definitely good to hear. Your thoughts on training amateurs and kids who want to get to where all the fighters that we just talked about, the the Weidmans and the Vellantes, they come here. They're part of your gym. The joy that you get out of training, and coaching and giving your expertise for these guys and women.
What's happening now? Look, I'm no kid anymore, so I'm getting older. So I'm trying to divide my time. But I used to put a lot more time into the amateurs, and that's where everything started. So but I'm kind of you got to pick and choose. There's so many people now that that's why a person like Jenny is invaluable, and we have another coach, Eric Heyer, and some of these other people, Jamie Franco for the wrestling, that they pitch in and help some of these people, and even Aljo, Chris, when they're teaching, they do a great job. But there is something about the amateurs because it's so new and it's so fresh, and there's no politics involved, and everything's really pure. That I really still love it. If I stop tomorrow, or if the UFC folded, I'd be happy just getting the amateurs to the highest point they could go.
Well, that brings me to my next question. We sit here at your office, in your place of work, Law MMA. To someone who has never heard of Law MMA, what is Law MMA all about? What is your mission statement? What do you bring, to everyone who, wants to learn more about you guys?
Yeah, I think the beautiful thing with Law MMA is if you want to do MMA, we got a program. If you want to do Thai boxing, glory fighting, we got a pro. You want to just box, we got a program. So whatever combat sport you want to do, this is what I think Law MMA is about. We have guys that box out of here. We have a great, kickboxing, Thai boxing program. We have a great MMA program. So if you want to just come in and just get in shape, I think it's fantastic. I do a lot of, private lessons with, professional people that need to decompress and de-stress, and they're under a lot of pressure, so they're never going to be fighters, but they do the similar workouts that the fighters go through, and that's great too. So I think whatever you want to get out of this place, you're going to get out of it.
How did Law MMA come about? You and Chris, how did this actually come together?
Yeah, I had the school, obviously, and then Chris wanted to get involved with the school, and he had just become champion, and he was willing to, put some money into it. He did a great job. He redid the whole place. We went from no showers to 3 showers, and, full staff of people. So, I think that was his vision of the place. I always kept it a little more, dirty and, down and dirty. But he did a great job with that. And that's really how it came about. He wanted to get involved with it. He wanted to have his own gym to train at, so we took a bigger spot, and so we didn't have to go other places. and we could bring people in, and that's what happened.
And what is a typical day for you here at Law MMA? Does it change, throughout the days, or?
It changes when the fights are coming up, but most of the typical days I do a lot of private lessons, and I teach class, and, I carve out time for the fighters and watch the sparring, and that's kind of it every day.
Any hobbies outside of MMA that anyone would like to know?
Hobbies, I love playing the guitar. That's my form of meditation. Some people meditate. I like to play the guitar.
Are you any good?
Yeah, I'm getting there. You know what I mean? It's always a work in progress, and that's the beauty. You can never beat the guitar. There's always. Right. Go to YouTube, watch some of these young kids playing. They're just phenomenal. So it's a lifetime project to really master the guitar, and that's what I like about it. It keeps my brain moving, and it's fun. And again, I think I use that instead of Tai Chi. I'm playing the guitar to relax.
Last question: what does the future hold for Ray Longo? We know we got UFC 205 and the future, but for you going on,
a nice beach in Costa Rica.
Okay.
I don't know. I think we're zoning in on retirement. No, I could never.
They call you the God.
I can never say the word retirement.
They call you the Godfather of MMA. How do you feel about that? Because some people might get a little, might not like it, but some people could say, I've done well. I've done well. There's a good reason behind that name. So
well, I think it would be a problem if I called myself the Godfather. I can't control. I've also been called fat. So what are you gonna do? So that's.
By future, we know that this place is not going anywhere.
Am I have a break in the mafia after this? No.
We know that you enjoy what you do.
Oh yeah, no, without a doubt. Yeah, I think I'm doing this till I'm 80, to be honest with you. But probably at a lesser capacity, more of maybe advisory or something like that. But yeah, no, I don't think I could ever get away, because now it's like the only sport I even give a shit about and watch and participate. So I also have the Ring of Combat with Lou Neglia. Mm-hmm. And we promote at the Capital Kickboxing. So it's a crazy schedule. I'm promoting fights, training fighters, teaching.
Busy guy.
Yeah, it's all good, man. It really is all good. I've been blessed to be able to work with the people, the Matt Serras, the Chris Weidmans, the Iaquintas, Aljo's, Drago. It really was a blessing, and to be able to make money at doing that is phenomenal. So. No complaints. I don't think I'm going anywhere that way, because there's still a couple of guys that I think are going to get to the big show, and then we'll just take it from there. But if I'm not training, I'm promoting. If I'm not promoting, I'll be doing something else.
Playing the guitar.
I'll be playing guitar at a coffee shop somewhere in Long Island.
We really appreciate Ray Longo stopping by with us here on MMA Long Island Magazine Video Center. Thanks so much, Ray, and best of luck.
Awesome, man. Thank you very much. No, pleasure. Thanks.